What is your best "oh, that's what it does" moment? My car has a button for the rear windshield wiper. Occasionally it would come on even if I hadn't pressed the button. I thought it was a short for the longest time. Then I realized it only happened when I had the front wipers on and went in reverse. Car is smarter than I am. I have to go test something. I was about 14 or 15 and was in some restaurant's bathroom. As I'm washing my hands, I look over to my right and notice this weird looking soap dispenser on the wall that had a spout on the top. I leaned in to get a closer look and almost immediately get sprayed in the eyes by delightful coconut scented mist. That's the day I found out that air fresheners are sometimes automatic. You poor thing. I laughed hysterically at this, though, because it's exactly how I would have discovered this. In your defense, though, those are supposed to be up high to better spread the smell and, well, not spray in people's eyes. I've had a garlic press sitting in my kitchen for months now. A few nights ago, while mincing garlic manually, my roommate brings it over, calls me a dumbass, and shows me what it does. The question is how you procured said kitchen implement without knowing what it does. When I was in my early teens, I found a device in my father's bathroom cabinet. I was perplexed as to its purpose. It appeared to be battery powered and there was a hole on the top. Inquisitively, I held it above my head while looking closely in the hole, and just as soon as I did, I had months worths of my dad's nose hairs in my eye and face. And that's how I found out what a nose hair trimmer was. That is not where I expected this story to go at all. We have an older RV that we use, and the driver's seat has this little button lever thing on the armrest. My dad had the armrest pushed back and I could see the button from where I was. I start playing with it thinking it just locks that armrest in place. Nope, it reclines the driver's seat. My dad was driving down the road when I discovered this. That was a great moment. I can just imagine you dad falling back in a state of panic and screaming at you like, what the actual frick? Why the frick would you do that, you little crap? In high school, this girl had a really long pinky fingernail and I asked her what it was. She said it was a coke nail. I said ooh okay, then pantomimed her punching the tab out on a can of coke with her pinky. After everyone stopped laughing, they explained it to me. We were in an elevator in a high-rise building with medical offices, along with other passengers, when an older man pushed the red emergency button by mistake because he had forgotten to push the button for his desired floor upon entering, and we went by it. It set off a loud fire alarm, brought the elevator to a jarring halt between floors, and called the fire department and paramedics. All he could say was, "Oh, I didn't realize it did all that." I've never heard of one that calls the fire department and paramedics before. Usually they just ring a bell and stop the elevator. Not mine, but my wife's that I got to help her with. We were still teenagers, probably 16 and 17 at the time. She had this skirt she loved to wear, a skirt that started at her waist and went all the way down to her feet. It was a pretty blue thing with some yellow flowers on it. She had worn it maybe 2 or 3 times since we had been dating. And the last time she went to put it on in front of me, she commented on how much she loved this skirt, but she thought that the way they sewed it was so odd. They left extra room in the front instead of the back for the butt, so she always just spun it around backwards and had the tag in the front. No big deal. After her sharing this with me, I looked at her kind of inquisitively and asked her, "Are you sure you aren't wearing a dress backwards?" She had this look of epiphany combined with excitement and confusion. I couldn't even try to describe it beyond that. She ran off to the bathroom, took her shirt off, pulled her skirt up and spun it around so the extra spacious part was now at her boobs. Turns out, she had a cute little blue dress this whole time. Pipe cleaners. I bought a pipe when I moved out for college. It got dirty. I needed to clean it. I went to the tobacco man and asked how. For 18 years I thought they were for making crafts. The tobacco man. When I was a kid, I wasn't sure how a car cigarette lighter was supposed to work. After all, how is it supposed to light a cigarette if it doesn't produce any flames? One day, my mom left me in the car by myself for a few minutes while she made a deposit in the bank. I decided I was gonna figure out the secret of the cigarette lighter. I pushed it in to activate it, pulled it out, and had a look. Towards the middle it had turned red. Naturally, I needed to conclude this investigation, so I put my thumb down on the red hot coil. Oh, I guess if it's hot enough to melt skin, it's probably hot enough to start some paper on fire too. Problem solved. Man, I got a great one for this. So I was 10 and helping my dad and brother set up the stage, chairs, and sound equipment for my youth group at church. I was in the closet where we kept everything by myself for about a minute, and I noticed this metal bar that I didn't realize at the time was attached to the wall running across the stage. I was thinking, hey, I've never seen that bar before. It looks like it will make an awesome sword, so I go to grab it, and when I lifted it up, all 5 of these portable collapsible stages that weighed about 80 pounds each fell on top of me. I broke both my tibia and fibula in half, an inch above the growth plate. Or maybe it was below, can't remember now. I was lucky I didn't black out. I spent 10 months on crutches, and right when I finally didn't have to be on crutches or in a boot or anything, we found out that it had also torn my ACL. So that was another few months on crutches. But hey, I discovered what that bar did. God man, that church sounds a bit sketchy. Or maybe they imagined a kid would never be left alone in there. One afternoon, my sister and I were cleaning our refrigerator when we came across a switch inside the freezer. Either her or me flicked it and continued to work on cleaning only to forget about it. For the next day or so we kept hearing the fridge make funny noises, and we thought since it was an old one, it must be dying. We also thought this was the reason why the ice maker was broken. Nope. Turns out we had turned on the ice maker. We must have lived in that apartment a good 2 years before we realized our freezer wasn't broken. The ice maker was just turned off. I didn't realize until well into my 20s that the little recessed pointy shape inside the caps for tubes of things, super glue, foodstuffs etc., was for breaking the seal. I always used a knife. Similar, a cork gun usually has a metal stick near the front that you can rotate out, like a tiny bayonet. I assumed that was to help you keep the right distance from the surface you were corking, and I used a needle to puncture the seal in the tube of cork. It turns out that you can pretty easily break a cheap cork gun just by squeezing a tube that isn't properly opened. When I realized the reason that I was getting such bad blisters in boot camp was because the thin socks are for the formal uniform. They're not warm weather socks. The first time I was ever riding in a school bus, I had the window seat. I was bored and saw a red handle on the window. I didn't know what it did. So, being a stupid kid, I pulled it. Suddenly there was a loud alarm and the bus driver slammed on the brakes. She yelled back, "Who did that?" and I sheepishly spoke up. She was pretty mad, but I think she understood that I didn't know what I was doing. Oh man, I have repressed that memory until now. I now remember that I have done the same thing. Just the other day, there's a knob on my driver's seat that I've never used and had no idea what it did. It's a 20-year-old Acura that I've had for about 6 years. Turn it one way, lumbar support. Turn it the other way, no lumbar support. Subject: plain light switch, beige in color, and marked 8 feet up on the wall of the summer camp office building. Result: siren on top of building serving as the camp alarm. I had a North Face backpack with one of those straps that goes across your chest. The strap had a little plastic thing on it. Never knew what it was for or really cared to find out. One day someone tells me it's a whistle. I was pleasantly surprised. There was some kind of turkey poker stick on my cutting block set. I was never entirely certain what it was for, but that was my best guess. One day I walked into the kitchen and saw my husband rubbing a knife on it. I told him he was going to ruin our turkey poker and he stared at me like it was the dumbest thing he had ever heard and then started laughing uncontrollably. It was a knife sharpener. Redial button on land phones. I'm Brazilian, and the redial button here is written redial, and not the Portuguese word for it. So I read it redial, and only when I was 16 or 17 I knew its purpose. If it makes you feel any better, I read this entire comment 3 times before realizing you were talking about the redial button. I kept reading it as redial. I'm American. Fun story. I crushed half a gallon of Breyers ice cream at 9 PM on a school night every other weekday before going to bed during my high school years. I had most painful stomach aches in school the next morning. I couldn't ask to go to the bathroom because everyone would know that I went to destroy the toilet. At the time I would have stomach pain so bad that I would pretty much go deaf. turn pale, and see specks of light everywhere until the bell rang for the next period. I did my business, went back to class and repeat. I loved ice cream, and this went on for about 3 years before someone else explained to me what lactose intolerance was. TLDR, lactose intolerance has ruined my stomach and butthole. Those circular tins of mints, usually promotional items, that you spill all over the place because the lids are really hard to get off. Turns out that if you push down on the lid, it magically pops off. When I realized my car's display has a little arrow pointing to the gas symbol to remind you what side the gas tank is on. Which is great for when you have to drive a friend's car and don't want to look like an idiot. I remember being at my grandmother's house as a kid and playing in her bedroom, where on her dresser I found a silver tube with a button on the bottom. I discovered pressing the button made the whole thing shake and buzz like it was alive in my hand. I took it to my mum to ask what it was, and I remember being confused at her reaction. She looked horrified, snatched it off me and told me not to go through grandma's bedroom. I kinda felt like I'd done something bad but had no idea why. Completely forgot about the entire incident until I was about 20. It dawned on me with horror. I played with my grandmother's vibrator. Your grandmother's dustbuster. I was in a Lutheran church with my father when I discovered there was this pull-down bar on the legs of the pew in front of me. Imagine my surprise when I learned those are for kneeling on to pray and not footrests. I went to my uncle's Catholic wedding and both discovered this and found out what it's used for at the same time. In college, I lived in a house that had a semi-finished basement where my room was. It looked like someone had just screwed drywall into the vertical boards coming down from the ceiling. There was about a half-inch gap between the drywall and the floor, so not the nicest place. There were 2 bedrooms, a laundry room and 2 storage rooms. It was also kind of annoying that I had to walk all the way upstairs to use the bathroom. I had been living there for about 3 months and a buddy of mine moved into the second basement room. I had given him the tour before he moved in. About a week after he moved in, I get a call. Him. Hey man, why'd you tell me we had to go upstairs when there is a bathroom in the basement? Me. PFFT. There's no bathroom in the basement. It's probably just a toilet sitting in that storage room. Flush. And that is how I found out that the second storage room that I had never taken the time to look in was actually a bathroom. Ha. That's the punchline to an episode of Malcolm in the Middle. I could never get my razor close enough to the underside of my nose while shaving because of the aloe strip. Only recently found out that the strip flips back for that exact reason. I found my parents' condom pack when I was 7. I thought they were balloons. 7 years later, 14-year-old me and my best friend bought a pack just to see what it was like. First of all, don't ever go in the store with your best friend and buy a pack condoms and share the prize. It looks incredibly weird, but that's not the point. We opened it and I thought looks familiar. Then I remembered. Open-faced reel on fishing poles. I never could get one to work right, until on our honeymoon we forgot the bream poles and had to buy what Bobby the bait guy, that is another story, had, which were 2 open-faced rods and reels. I was not happy, as every time I have tried to use an open-faced reel I ended up with a mess of line, and pretty much in tears, and in the last 20 years I had not been fishing at all primarily because of this. The bream poles were for the honeymoon. I did not tell my wife it had been that long. I swore to her I knew how to fish, which is technically true. We get to the lake. I baited my hook, and hers too. She doesn't like crickets, and proceeded to pathetically attempt to cast. My wife saw me struggling and asked me which side I wanted to reel with. I said right side. She took the reel handle off and put it on the other side, and lo and behold it worked. I had not been fishing since 1995 because my reel was upside down and nobody told me. She also explained how to make sure the tension is right and how to make sure the line doesn't end up in a big ball. And also, the arrow pointing to the side the gas cap is on. Your wife is more of a man than you. I'd been flying for about 5 years. As a flight engineer, I'm the guy on the plane who knows how everything works. Fuel, electrics, motors, hydro. Anyway, I was in a simulator one day, the fancy kind that actually moves. Bored as frick. course we weren't doing anything that involved me, so I'm looking around the cockpit, which is an exact replica of the real one. But I notice this button I've never seen before. It says "my head off." I'm racking my brain, trying to figure out what this button might do. Anyways, it's just a sim, and YOLO, so I push it. All of a sudden, an alarm is going off, and the sim is off motion, and returning back to its neutral position. The little bridge we use to get in and out is lowering itself. Sim operators are confused and pee off. Turns out, I found the only button in the sim that does something in the real world. Many laughs were had, at my expense. Beers were owed. When I was a kid, I had an AK-47 toy replica. The crap was legit. It was made out of metal, and a 6-year-old had a hard time wielding it. It shot fake, plastic bullets. So, there was this interesting looking trigger on the side of the gun, and I didn't know what it did. It was quite hard to pull, so I never really bothered. But one day, I was playing cops and criminals with my cousin. He had 2 plastic pistols, and I decided I'd pull that side trigger. After about 3 minutes of trying, I did it. We started playing, and soon started shooting each other. My cousin wasn't very precise, but 6-year-old was quite good. I pulled the trigger, not the side one, and the gun started shooting. But this time, it was burst fire. My cousin fell on the grass crying and making weird noises in pain, and I just dropped the gun as my grandpa was coming to give me a beating. He started pulling me, and I was like, so that's what that trigger does. My cousin is fine enough. The rumble strip style side on a CD is made to open CDs. Just rub it on a hard, flat surface and the cellophane will rip open. When a friend showed me this, it literally blew my mind. I have struggled to open CDs for so long. Holy crap, you've blown my mind. Now I haven't bought a new CD in years, but goddang, that's amazing. I noticed that one of the ceiling fans in my house was severely out of balance, and I told my girlfriend, dang, I'll have to get weights and rebalance that soon. I watched her silently go from puzzled, to shocked, to relieved in a matter of seconds. Rewind to the previous week. While cleaning the ceiling fans, she scraped the balance weight off because she thought our house was being bugged. I work at a university doing computer janitor stuff, run around, fix people's computer boxes. One of our buildings is kind of strange. I believe it had doctor's offices in it, or something similar. Anyway, I was doing some work for a lady in one of these offices, on my own, when I noticed a button on the wall, not very big, near the light switch. I stared at it for quite a while, and while waiting for some software to install, fiddled with it, tried to pull it off the wall, couldn't. Tried to see what it connected to, also couldn't. Eventually began fiddling with the actual mechanism, pushed it in, and realized that there was no way of releasing it. Panic. Mess with it more for a bit. Can't get it to unstick. Can't hear or see any differences, and decide it's best to just leave it and pretend it never happened. Roughly 3 minutes later, I hear a knock on the door. I open it, and it's campus security, looking exceptionally pee off. Turns out it's a panic alarm, and the building was previously used for psychiatry sessions. Was there in case the patient flipped out. Still connected for some reason, and that was the day I learned that some buttons summon annoyed security guards. I was drying my hair at my parents' house with my mom's hairdryer. She had recently broke the back thingy off. I was in a hurry and my long hair got caught in it. I was screaming in pain. My dad had to cut a chunk of my hair off to free me, and my mom just stood there going, "Oh, so that's what that's for." Intake filter is the thingy you are describing. It's not just there to prevent your hair from getting sucked into it. It's also there to prevent other things from getting sucked in there and damaging the fan and or motor. When making a cup of loose leaf tea, how much of these tea leaves do I want to put in the cup? About a teaspoon. On mission in Iraq. First time driving the dump truck for route sanitation detail. Yeah, don't pee off your squad leader. Bad things happen, like being sent to pick up another nation's trash. Anyway, there was a button that literally had a picture of a bomb on it, like the spy vs spy type bombs, the ball with a wick. Me and my team leader, for the life of us, couldn't figure out WTF it was for, but didn't press it because, you know, bomb. Well, About halfway into the mission, curiosity gets the better of us, and we press the dang thing. Nothing happens. About 2-3 minutes later, when it's time to move on, the engine seizes up. WTF. We get out and look, and oil is everywhere. Turns out the button was one the mechanics put on in case we needed to ditch the truck, and no one bothered to tell us. Everyone was pretty pissed off about having to wait for the matches to come get us, but I couldn't stop laughing. TL. DR. Private me pushed a button everyone assumed I wouldn't. Broke truck. Boy, I bet your squad leader was happy with you after that. Pee him off enough to send you on trash deal, then you break the truck. P. Dude, those Chinese finger traps. I cried when my older brother tricked me into it and didn't get out of it until my mom came home 2 hours later. I use the self-checkout at the grocery store and was always irritated when I'd run out of room on the bagging carousel. Item has been removed from the bagging area. Just 2 days ago I noticed that the metal platform above the bags is also connected to the weighing mechanism, so you can put your bags there. Another thing, in case you still run out of room, after you scan and bag an item, it should go back to the main screen and the pay button should be blinking. You can take things off at that point and it won't yell at you. When I realized what mile markers are, and then that exit numbers correspond to mile markers, I felt like I'd just decoded the entire United States. I had a brain phase once and asked a friend what assertion gauge was in his car. He said it was a clock. I asked what does it do? Tell time. I slapped myself for good measure. I got a new running watch about a year ago. Being a I can do it myself kind of person, I immediately threw away the instructions, thinking I wouldn't need them. I mean, it's a watch. How hard can it be? So I took the watch, looked at the labeled buttons and saw one listed as light. I couldn't imagine what that would mean because it was a watch. I clicked the button. It made the screen glow. I said to myself, didn't know what I was expecting. My friend's parents had a shock mat to keep their dogs from getting on top of their kennels. One day his dad walks by, unaware of what they are, puts his hands on it and says, "What's this?" He quickly pulls his hands back when it shocks him and he just goes, "Oh, that's what it is." I have had my car since 2006. I never really noticed that there was a little tab on the underside of my rear view mirror. I was in the car with my now ex-so, and I was bitching about a large truck that had their brights turned on directly behind me. She reached up, flipped the tab, and my rear view mirror went dark. Apparently its use is to dim lights from behind you. Blew my freaking mind though. Rear view mirrors aren't actually flat, they're wedge shaped. Flipping the tab switches it from the sliver back coating reflection to being reflected off the surface of the glass. When I was a kid playing Pokemon Gold, I had no idea what release meant, so I decided to find out by testing it on my Ho-Oh. It still took me a while to realize what happened. Ooh, I have another one. Did you know that you can adjust your seatbelt, as in how high or low the strap goes? I found it one day and it is in all the cars I have remembered to check, since there is a thingy thing up at the top of the belt that you can use to set the height of the belt. Short person game changer right there. Mine's been lodged at the highest point since 2011. I'm 5'3". If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.